Oh dear, just banked up the old fire. Ringing the bells for the servants, it doesn't do much anymore. This place, when built, was a proper upstairs, downstairs place, and don't know if you could see, but the wall isn't quite right there. And that's where the handle was. The tube is still buried in the wall that took the wire down to the servants' bells. Directly below me as it goes, that was the main kitchen. You could see when they took all the plaster off the wall down there that there was a huge archway, obviously intended for a big old iron range. All echoes of the past. Well, that's not the only echo of the past we've got round here. Years ago, I got the fire going nicely, fell asleep in front of it, only to wake up at about 2 o'clock in the morning with one hell of a jolt, and an intense feeling of not being alone, shall I say. And most odd, because my two cats were sat there at the doorway, along with my pet fox, and they were growling and hissing and spitting and making the most ungodly noises. And there was just an intense feeling of not being alone, let me put it that way. And it was also very, very cold, despite the grate being full of glowing embers. It was still far too cold. Shouldn't be that cold. Now, this happened around Christmas time, and my neighbours were all away. They'd gone to visit relations. There was nobody next door either, because in those days next door was a doctor's, and they were shut, obviously, for the Christmas holiday. But they were doing up the flat down below. And as I had the key, I thought, oh God, I better go and look and see what's happened. So off I goes with the cavalry sabre over there, down below, and the torch. Not a sausage, nothing there at all. And it remained a bit of a mystery to me, of course. It was spooky, not the sort of thing that generally happens. But the following week, I saw a black shadow go beetling through my hallway out there, and it looked to be about the same size as the average domestic moggy might be, cat, And it turned round and went through what is now the door to my broom cupboard and disappeared. Well, the door to my broom cupboard, which has a flat floor in there now, was once the door to the servants' staircase to down below. And it did get me wondering. I thought, oh, well, it's just, perhaps Cook's cat from years ago, no harm there. Doing a bit of sniffing around at the local museum, though, recently, has got me a few names for these people. The original owner was a Louis Oliver Glenister, who was quite a sort of worthy and well-to-do type when you'd have to be to run a place like this, with big fireplaces in every room and all this sort of thing. It was all gas lit here, and gas jets, I suppose mantles later, then electricity came very early to this town, so it would have been quite something. He lived here with his wife Naomi, and they had 5 kids. And I've seen him well, not really seen, more smelt, because he smoked cigars, and you can smell a vile smell of cigar smoke sometimes around the place. And yet I don't smoke, my neighbours don't smoke, next door doesn't smoke, so where's that coming from? It's definitely cigars. Most recently they've been doing a lot of work, well, they say renovating upstairs. They've actually wrecked the place. There's nothing Victorian left up there. It's all been taken away. All the servants' bell tubes and all the interesting little wires and rods and levers and springs, it's all gone. And I was getting in my washing the other day, and it sounds really mundane, doesn't it? Doing the washing, getting it in off the line. And something caught my eye over by the garden wall where there's a big old rose tree, and it must have been here a good many years, because the stem is about 3 inches diameter. It's big, and I have a feeling that that's been here since this house was built, or just after. I turned around because something something caught my eye, and I half expected to see a rather over-inquisitive little squirrel. Oh no. I caught a glimpse of a lady in full Victorian dress, high Victorian dress, and she turned to face me and then disappeared, leaving just the wall and the roses. Obviously, that was Mrs. Glenister. I suppose that they are probably on this floor because this floor was the last one that is more or less as it was. When the place was built, there was an archway through here. And if you go into the kitchen, you can still see it. I don't know why they didn't take it out both sides. There's no trace of it at all in here, except for a cut in the picture rail. But you definitely get the impression that the Glenisters are not happy about what's been going on. Not happy at all. And that was a funny thing about seeing that ghost of Naomi Glenister by the garden wall, by the roses. Because I couldn't help noticing something came through my mind like a flash, as you sometimes do when you connect something to something else. And when they were taking out all the old plaster and everything, they naturally exposed the old wallpaper at first. And the first lot of wallpaper that was on there upstairs in what must have been her bedroom, I suppose, was covered in roses. Spooky, isn't it? But it's not the first time I've been spooked like that. As a kid, I was mowing grass at the caravan park. It used to be an air base. I think it was an American air base from memory. And they'd made the officers' quarters and all this stuff into the shop and the disco and all this sort of thing. They kept the old toilet blocks and tarted them up and all this. And I was putting the lawnmower away one night. It was a ride-on thing, you know, when you're only sort of 12, you know, it's the dog's bollocks, isn't it, driving your own self-propelled thing, or it was in those days anyway. I know, simple, weren't we? But something made me look over towards the sunset. It was a lovely sunset, and I saw 3 airmen walking away from me in silhouette. And I knew what they were because I'd seen things like that on the television. But they were not of this world, let me put it that way. Another spooky thing happened many moons ago on the railway when I was doing an up and over shunt. My conductor, old Bill Glossop, he was very much down to earth, and it even spooked him. He used to stay in the cab I was in, drive forward, and when we got over the set of points we needed to go back over, Bill would stop me, pressing the buzzer phone. So we then had to walk through the train in opposite directions, me to get to what was now the front cab and him to get back to his guard's van in the middle of the train. And anyway, we'd done this, said hello, and he gave me a paper and all this sort of thing. And as I'm sitting there waiting for the EP brake, the air brake to pump up, I hear the air compressors running, but it's doing this, as if somebody's walking through the car. So I opened the door into the side corridor where the first glass was, and "That you, Bill?" There's deafening silence, nothing there at all. So then I buzzed him up on the buzzer phone and got him immediately, and Bill wasn't particularly fast on his feet. There was no way he could have walked through that driving trailer where I was, then through the second glass trailer, and got back in his guard's van in the time it took me to get back in the cab from the vestibule. It couldn't be done. And we both felt cold and ill at ease on this train, and we walked through it because we were sure somebody was on there buggering about. Well, you would be, wouldn't you? And we walked through this train. There wasn't a soul on it, but it was the middle of the winter, and all the internal doors that we carefully closed to keep the heat in were open. Yeah, very strange indeed. And the thing was that where you finished up beyond this set of points, you weren't at a platform. There was a dirty great drop into a land drain on one side, and the other side was a railway track. We were waiting for a diesel to come through Ashford, I think, before we could go. the whole thing was just very, very strange indeed. We never mentioned a thing about it, and it wasn't until years later that somebody told me that that train that we had, from the description I gave of it, because it was a strange one. 3 of the coaches were the old-fashioned type with the wing seats and the big cushions and all that. And the second-class trailer, it was the later build. So that had a slightly more Spartan interior. But this unit was made up of what was left after a serious smash on the old Central Division, as was, at, I think they called it Copyhole Junction, on the Brighton line, main line, Victoria to Brighton. So, yeah, more echoes from the past there. There's certainly more to this world than we know, isn't there? I've always said that, and always will do. And, ever since I've done the colouring job on him, he seems more active than ever. Sometimes he has a sort of woe-begone look, sometimes he looks daggers at you, and sometimes he's almost sort of smiling, and his eyes can follow you around the room. I've actually seen them move. So, yes, there's very definitely unfinished business there. It wasn't his time to go, you see. It probably wasn't whoever that was on that train's time to go either. So he's still wandering up and down, or she's still wandering up and down the train. The other spooky one on the railway was on the last one up from Ashford one night. We stopped at a tiny little station called Pluckley, in the middle of nowhere. It's just all hot poles, apple orchards, you know, everything you'd think of, everything the tourist board would like you to think about Kent. It also happens to be, as I found out later, one of the most spooked places in the county. And as I ran into the station and came to a stand, there was a lady standing on the platform. Now, when you got in one of those old trains with the swing doors, it used to make quite a clump when you shut the door. When I got the bell to go, I hadn't heard a door go, so I just assumed that the lady had perhaps got in by my guard, you know, who had an inward opening door that wasn't so noticeable when you closed it. So away I goes, gets up the town. I said to him, bloody hell, what's happening down there tonight at Pluckley? Never seen the place so alive. People getting on there on this one. Oh dear, whatever next? And he looked rather surprised, and he said, well, nobody got on there. There wasn't a soul there. Nobody got on there at all. And I could tell by the baffled look on his face that he wasn't winding me up. But, yes, echoes of the past. Yeah. I was speaking to a fellow YouTuber the other day, actually, about it, because he too has seen a few strange things, shall I say, and sometimes you wish you wouldn't, really, but fascinating stuff. If only I could get them to speak and do their thing, you know, speak and say, you know, whatever it is that's bothering them and why they're still here, but I'm afraid I'm not quite that good. I should have been a medium, more like an extra large. Oh dear. Anyway, on that slightly spooky note, happy Halloween. If you are out there in the east of the United States, you know, hope it hasn't been too bad, that hurricane. Dear, yeah, stay safe. Anyway, see you soon.